An agreement is an agreement. Yes, no, maybe, somehow, you don't know. You might have heard that question somewhere, and most likely known the importance of having a contract in any and every potential business relationship that you or your startup will have. On the other hand, isn't it quite ironic when you do what is expected of you by ensuring that certain agreements are formally documented into contracts? They are put in place to guide the various business relationships. But those contracts just turn out to be mere worthless pieces of paper because one or more of the relevant and concerned parties never had any intentions to be bound by the terms of contract, but instead had other plans of making this an academic activity, ticking it off, deceiving the other party to attain a certain beneficial level, and eventually misappropriate, obtain business funds to try to frustrate already established expectations and processes in the hopes that what they might get away with their glaring misdeeds. Hi, I'm Ijoma Akwiu, and I'm the startup architect. So, what exactly is a contract? The simplest definition I could get for you all is that a contract is simply an agreement between two people or more that creates an obligation to perform or not perform a particular duty. A contract could be written or oral, but it is highly recommended that it is in written form because it carries more weight. Paper does carry more weight. Documentary evidence is important. And to greatly avoid a he said, she said kind of situation. This brings us to why anyone needs a contract in the first place. Amongst other reasons, my core justifications for a contract are that one, it formalizes a relationship between the parties involved. Two, a contract is a record of rights, responsibilities, and obligations of the persons entering into it. Three, it can, to a certain degree, prevent disputes from happening because everybody has everything written out in black and white. Four, it outlines processes and penalties when any dispute eventually arises. You don't know tomorrow. Now, when does one need a contract? In my opinion, the moment you sense or anyone senses any potential value exchange and would feel cheated if there isn't adequate compensation, be it monetary or otherwise, for that value being exchanged. That is when you need a contract as soon as possible. So, who are the parties or owners of a contract? Hmm. The people or entities, again, a contract can be entered into, between people or companies that are directly exchanging these values and obligations. Also, in this context, there's something called purity of contract, which means that the contracts or contracts are only binding on the parties or persons that entered into that contract, and no third party can enforce this said contract or be sued under it. However, be aware that there are exceptions to this privity principle. Please seek professional and legal counsel, i.e., me, on this. Now, which contract is applicable in any situation? As you can imagine, different or peculiar situations demand their own bespoke contracts. There are generic ones like, tenancy agreements, we all know that. Employment contracts, we all know that. Non disclosure agreements, I'm sure you know that. But generally, and more importantly, despite the names, one must fully access this subject matter, the parties, and the outcomes they all desire to be bound by in this contract. My sincerest advice here, ensure you leave no stone unturned at this stage. Assume the worst of everyone involved, and to the best of your abilities, ensure the contract is as exhaustive and as self explanatory and legally binding as possible. Because when it matters, people will twist themselves into a pretzel just to avoid responsibility. Finally, where is your potential contract enforceable? This depends on a number of factors. For example, if the contract is between people or companies, in the case of companies, you have to consider where the relevant companies are or were incorporated, where to specifically agree to be performed, where the companies agreed as a dispute resolution venue, all of the above, or some of the above. As you must have deciphered by now, there are gray areas even in black and white matters. Hoping this hasn't been an information overload for you. This is why more ethical lawyers are needed to ensure this aspect of the startup journey is handled effectively. If not, you could sadly witness events where collusion happens, forging of documents and signatures are happening, and investors' funds are wrongly used to bribe key officials, especially those who are meant to enforce and uphold contracts. And you can just hope that time, facts, and evidence vindicate your matter. So, having seen the length and breadth, the best and worst scenarios of this particular topic at hand, do not hesitate to book a session with me to save you the time and the potential headaches that bad and fraudulent actors who are moonlighting as ecosystem players can give you, which then kills your very valuable startup that you really thought would exist in the nearest future. So until next time, power to a transparent and accountable ecosystem.